The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Community Chat with Collin. I am your host, Collin Dias. Today is Wednesday, August 23rd, and we have a good show for you guys planned today. I am joined by City Council and Mayoral candidate Jordan James Silvia. How are you today, Mr. Silvia?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice meeting you. It's the first time.
Same here, and I appreciate the bow tie. You look very sharp today in the haircut.
Yep, I wanted to dress nice today.
You look sharp.
Thank you. Let's just get into the questions.
Sure.
Could you just tell the viewers like your background, your history, and just finish it off by saying how you got involved in the political field?
Sure. So for anybody who doesn't know at home, a few years ago, say 2014, I believe, I got involved in the whole recall movement with CJ, Bob Camara, and also Josh Silva, a handful of people. And that's pretty much, my involvement in local politics. I followed it for a little while before that, but that's like my personal involvement. And then I ended up running for office in 2015 for city council, ran for mayor as well,
right.
Against Sam Sutter, and was, as you put it, failed city council candidate. But so my chair just broke, but don't worry about that. So I got involved politically a couple years ago, and I'm running again this cycle.
Nice.
Yeah.
A lot of people credit you for the demise of Mr. Sutter. Can you get into maybe your secret plans, how you got to his demise? How'd you get to him?
Sure. So I think that's giving me a lot of credit because there was obviously other people there going to town on him as well. But
right.
Yeah, I'm not like what you would consider like a politician. You know what I mean? I'm an average person.
Right.
Just as an example, like the people who are serving in office now when they speak, even Jay Zill, he's a well-spoken guy, but they have like a certain way and a caution about them where I don't care. I don't really put too much credit in that. I try to
agree
myself, and it's kind of the things I find lacking in politics is how people are so fraudulent in the way they come across, you know what I mean? But as far as specifically Sutter, and also we can't forget obviously your Uncle Will, right? So both of them guys, I mean, that obviously wasn't just me. That was, honestly a couple dozen people, maybe 100 people just all getting together, and there was a lot of things going on in the city that, people didn't want to see continue. So that's how we got rid of him. And then Sutter I did think I got on the skin of Sam, which was surprising even to me to this day because the guy is a long-time attorney, and he's supposedly debates people for a living pretty much in that role. You know what I mean? I don't know how much you do of that as the DA, but so yeah, the back and forth that politics can get. As people know too, obviously the social media stuff we threw up in Fall River and all that. I voice a lot of my opinions, and I believe in them only because I believe in them strongly. So I can do that, online. And people, you hear like a common criticism is, oh, this guy with a keyboard. I obviously go face to face with any person. It doesn't matter. So when I was in that element with him, another thing too, I don't hold elected people in any regard. If anything, I hold them less than the average person. So I don't really hold.
They work for us.
Yeah, I don't believe that, but that's like the line, right? I don't know how much you believe Jay Zill Correa works for you or the council.
Not at all, but that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's the line, right? There's a lot of narratives out there that completely aren't true. So then I just watch their behavior. And if you're a strange, I mean, me and you have also conflicted as well. Like you've said stuff about me, I've said stuff about you. It is what it is.
Right.
I try to treat you as an equal as well too, because if I patted you on the head and said, yeah, great job, like when you went down there with the 17ers thing, I feel I'd be giving you a disservice, So I try to treat you like I would treat everybody else. But so that's basically my tact in dealing with people, and I don't pull punches, so to speak. And I think it's important because I think these people are harming, not the city, you can say the city and the people forever, but really myself and my family. If it wasn't me and my family, I probably would have never gotten involved. Even in the recall and the purple bags craziness, I always likened it to like you're taking food out of I had babies at the time, you know what I mean? So like baby food, and that's how much it costs for like these bags, and then you're literally taking food out of and it just never like reconciled in my brain where the people who were asking me to sacrifice are like Ken Pacheco, these paid government liars who make like double what I make, you know what I mean? So I was ready to like get them all thrown out of office. Ken Pacheco is still kicking around in the school department. I think that's terrible on them, and it just is what it is. Kathy Viveris, all these same players, you know what I mean? So we'll see if the future brings any change to that. But yeah, just as far as all them people, I don't mean to keep going.
No, it's okay.
I just deal with people as I deal with people. There's no Jordan Silvia on Threw Up in Forever and then Jordan Silvia on a debate thing and Jordan Silvia would come. I just am the same person at all times, you know what I mean? I pride myself on that because it's, I can see where people can go down the road to try to fall into, be like Richard Cavasaris and wear my blazer to sleep as my pajamas, or try to be this to the fire union and then this to people saying I'm conservative, cutting, overtime, and it's all craziness. But I can see why people do that because it's successful getting elected. I haven't been successful, as you pointed out, getting elected. So people tell me, like my friends who actually want to see me succeed in this realm, tell me, Jordan, tone it down. You really have to say all that. And the second you start, in my opinion, going down the road of being a fraudulent political, whatever term you want to use, you're already, not working for the people, or however you want to say it.
Right. Well, I like to say I've been over at Richard's house, and when he's at his house, he puts on the T-shirt. he puts on.
He kicks back a little bit.
He kicks back. He has the T-shirt.
Is he still in that house? Tell me the truth.
He is still. He is. I talked to him yesterday. He still lives in the house.
Nice.
He technically, but he still lives at the address.
Mm-hmm.
He is selling his house.
Yeah,
and that,
I know there was a question with Jay-Z recently. All these crazy. That's the thing with politics too. Like the silly, nonsensical stuff that like does he live there? Like I'd imagine the mayor lives in Fall River. I imagine Richard lives in Fall River. I know Richard's selling his house. Like Noah Vincelette. South Coast Independent Radio, he puts out a lot of stuff. We always go back and forth.
Right.
And I appreciate people like that too, who put out, they're not the Herald News, they're not WSAR, and they put out, a lot. That kid puts a lot of time in and trying to just throw information out there, and let people decide. So I appreciate people like that because I try to do that myself. I don't have time to do it as much lately.
Well, sorry, let me get back to my questions.
I tend to go off on tangents. That's another thing too.
No, it's okay. How about before you got involved in the political field? Why should people elect you over your experience? Do you believe you have the right experience to hold this office?
It's a very good question. And this reminds me of the Carlos Caesar thing because I got zingers lined up, right, for debates coming up next week about not throwing your eggs out there, but I'm not going to hold anything back. But just on experience alone, back to what I was just talking about what politicians say and then the reality of real world. So do I have the experience? What I do for a living, because you probably don't know. I run a small business, right? A successful small business in the city, not by myself, right? I'm an office manager in a successful small law firm. There's 5 attorneys at my work. We make payroll every week. Everybody, is happy with the living they earn, and our clients are happy and whatnot. So that is what I do, right? So I don't go around telling everybody, oh, I'm a small business person, like Jay-Z did with Snow Owl, which I don't believe there was much of an actual business thing going on there. Like the whole, I don't know if they've ever turned, a penny in revenue or whatnot. Also, again, Cavasaris, you want to talk about my experience compared to other people's. He goes around telling people he's a small business man. I'll definitely put what I do as a small business person up against anybody because I know all the hats that I wear and everything I do on my 9-to-5 job. But Linda is retired, and I don't think she's ever held an executive position. I hire and let go of people. I don't know if any of these other people, obviously Jay-Z does now as the mayor, but I don't know if any of these other people ever held a capacity like that. And you've seen stumbles because of it. Like you've seen Jay-Z have a couple problems with hiring people, hiring investors in Snow Owl, hiring people who their resumes were fake, stuff like that. And I guess there's growing pains, and I'm sure I would make mistakes too. But yeah, I feel very experienced and qualified to. There's other things I've done in my life through the military and just other jobs I've held, that I feel that I'm capable of doing many different things. But just now in the realm of managing is what my primary role, and I think I do a fair job. So.
Well, thank you for answering that. Let's get into some of the city issues.
Sure.
What would be your plans as mayor to fix the city's infrastructure and, most importantly, the sidewalks, which is a big talking point going around for this election?
Are the sidewalks a big deal? I know the streetscapes thing has came up. I've been against that from day one. Let me just get a little into like my political philosophies on what I would do, what I believe, and what.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not me in there, what I think the city should do, what I think the role of government should be. So the streetscapes is like we're going to take a couple streets that just coincide with where the mayor lives and where his number one financial backing guy owns property there. Whatever, they want to build up that neighborhood, that's fine. There are businesses there, that's great. But I'm not for like a more of a frills type. I don't buy into the idea that brick walls, brick sidewalks being installed there are going to change much, because my friend Josh Silva lives right around the corner, and I've been in his driveway while Steve Camara's tenants are like in the street, holding court, and I had to like leave with my kid because it was like a dangerous situation. So
they're holding court?
Yeah, just they're just doing whatever they do, yelling, screaming, threatening to kill people, soliciting drugs, prostitution, whatever goes on at those properties on Purchase Street. So I don't think changing the sidewalk there and blowing millions of dollars, to renovate that one area, and then like the millennials are going to come in with the tight pants and save everybody. I don't buy into that. So I think it's a waste of money. B, I don't think it's effective, but I know potholes is actually
right. Sidewalks and potholes.
Yeah, so I know because they've been talking about Capras brought up, a couple people on the council brought up they wanted to divert money from that, and there was a question on whether they could do that, and whether this.
Well, they did do it.
Well, they did whatever they did, right? Here's the problem though. So I just heard Jay Zeal on with Jean St. Pierre, I think yesterday, saying, they surveyed all the potholes. It's going to be September, right? So like pretty much next week, and they surveyed all the potholes, and they're going to start filling them. I used to actually fill potholes too. When I came home from Iraq, one of my first jobs when I got back, I was actually like worked for a construction company. That's what I did. So I'm the only person who's, you talk about experience, I'm the only person who's actually filled a pothole out of all these people. So it doesn't take much. It's taking asphalt and pouring it into a hole and like stamping it down and moving on. You know what I mean? It doesn't require some pothole machine that people are trained for or not trained, like whatever the craziness that, and they talk about the millions of dollars it's going to cost to fix them. It's not a big money thing. It doesn't require a lot of people and manpower and whatnot. What it does, actually, that is all it requires is people. So if they got a couple trucks filled with asphalt, they went around and just knocked them out, as opposed to debating and talking about them and strategizing. Like Sam Sutter did the same thing, and they probably did more work on the website and keep maintaining that than actually having human beings filling potholes. That's where I think the government will always fail. Normal people don't run their business that way. Normal people don't conduct their own. I wouldn't take care of my property that way. You know what I mean? I would just get it done.
Well, I see you have Mr. Capras laid out a 10-year plan, so I believe you think that's maybe overstretching it, maybe going too far, you believe?
I don't know, because that's actually one of his shorter-term plans. I know the first thing, and this is my thing too. So everyone has plans, the politicians, myself included, right? So his first plan was the 30-year plan, right? The 30-year revenue plan.
Right.
I don't know how many, if anything, from that plan was ever even tried and attempted while he had the authority to do so in the council, right? So you can have all the all the Santa's list, you know what I mean, that you would ever want, and it doesn't really matter if you just sit, and argue about all this other stuff. That's the problem, and all the people in government say, oh yeah, government takes a long time. Well, they're not even trying to accomplish things. So you could have a 30-year plan, 10-year plan, 100-year plan. If you're not doing anything to actually get it done, it doesn't matter.
To fix all the potholes, like you just said, through this simple way you mentioned, how much do you believe it would cost the city?
That's a good question, because I was just recently trying to think of this, because I know how much, when I worked for the paving company that I used to, how much they used to bill out. It was basically like a couple $100 really is what they would choose. And if you're billing somebody for that, that's not what it costs, you know what I mean? So if you had a city, all they really need is city crews of guys, making very reasonable rates, because Fall River has, you know, a large group of people who are looking for work. You know, we don't have to overpay people. We don't have to make this a union thing. Maybe there are rules inside the union contract, and those are things that I would want to change. Whether it's, I already talked to Collin Silvia about changing state laws that like hamstring cities from dealing with labor issues, as you saw last night with the public safety meeting. You know, they're talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right.
It's $400 to have one officer on overtime per shift. And if anyone just, you know, thinks for 1 second and does the math on that, and they're talking 2 per, and it's going to be 100,000. None of their numbers, although by the way, made any sense last night. They were saying it was going to cost $100,000. Chief Dupierre said they were going to go through that in a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. With the numbers he was saying, none of them matched up. But you have problems where the way government works. You know, he said they had 22 guys hired for a shift, but after comp time, vacation, sick time, personal days, after all these things, they only had 10 guys that were actually on the job, and some of them could have even been on overtime. You know what I mean? So that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Businesses don't operate that way. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I'm not against unions, but I believe this nation, but especially this area, is overregulating when it comes to trade, jobs, union contracts.
We 100% agree with that. Yep. Another example would be, you know, the other fiasco. These are just things that are recently popping up in the city with the licenses. I heard every politician says, oh yeah, we want to bring all. We don't want to. Jazo said this a million times. We don't want to grow the business base, right? So they don't have to just take more revenue from the people who are here, right? So then when time came to grow the base, right, because there was a package store that wanted to go down at the South Coast Plaza. Everybody got all politically involved, and it was gotcha politics. Again, I care nothing about like trying to prove people wrong, you know, and make them look. They do that all on their own on TV every other Tuesday, whatever it is. So what happened was allegedly that this guy came down. They tried to get a license, wasn't able to originally. Then they saw how dysfunctional the politics was in the city of Fall River, and now. A gentleman was able to basically sell his license for like some.
Right, I was at that meeting. That was a fiasco.
Yeah, it was a total fiasco, right? So, and then Jazo was saying, yo, that was a success. The guy sold it, and that company came down and purchased it on the free market. There's nothing free market about that license situation. That's a completely arbitrary government rule that says you can only have 1 per 5,000 population. That's not even accurate. None of the towns and cities in Massachusetts hold to that. But again, just the point of, if it was me, if I was in there as a libertarian, I don't want to tell businesses, maybe we could have 50 more package stores in Fall River. I don't know that. Nobody in Fall River knows that, as much as they want to try to pretend they do, because they always pretend they know everything. We could literally support maybe 50 package stores in Fall River in addition to what we have. There'd be 50 more businesses. There'd be tons of money coming in, revenue, jobs, all these important things.
Isn't it like 28 right now?
I think it's 20 right
20?
now. Yeah, that's 20, 21 now, 21. CJ's saying 21. We'll have to get somebody to fact check that. But whatever the number is, it could be probably double. And because I imagine Fall River does have enough people that will sustain more package stores in the city. But we'll never know, because the politicians are just fighting, trying to make each other look stupid, and it just. Again, so this one guy came in, they were able to open up, but it was at the expense of another business, so it was a net gain of 0, whereas if they would have just invented a license out of thin air, there would have been an additional business,
No, I know what you mean. Let's get to another important topic. How would you deal with the opioid crisis in our city?
Opioid's a tough one, yeah. And you know what, Colin, that's a great transition, because during that license meeting, I'm thinking, there's so many pharmacies. We had like Rite Aids across the street from Rite Aids on South Main near Letty's Bakery for a little while. Right. And they're just like flooding the city with pills, right? But they're talking about like, we can't have enough, I won't stand for a discount super alcohol package store. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me. It makes no sense. But how would I deal with opioids? That's a good point too, because that's also back to the police thing.
And I'll throw in my next question would be, but it all pertains to the same thing. How would you deal with the crime in the city? So if you're gonna,
because they're related, right? The two are related.
In a way.
Opioid,
in a way,
100%, 100%. Right. So there's two narratives. Again, there's always these narratives that get thrown out there that I want to specifically address on drugs, and that they're both obviously intertwined with crime. The first one is. Why people die, right? Why there's a massive spike in overdose deaths,
right?
Right. So why do people die from using heroin, opioids, whatever? Literally, it's because they don't know what they're taking in their bodies. That's been the narrative. The narrative is there's fentanyl, carfentanil, all this crazy stuff in there. So somebody who hasn't used drugs in a while, then they start to use, and it's laced with something else, and they pass away, unfortunately. And I maybe that there is something to that, but if people could get actual heroin that they knew what was in it, actual opioids, that's why people prefer to use pharmaceuticals as opposed to street drugs that get smuggled over in like body cavities from people, in far off lands. Basically, the long and short of it is the criminal justice response, right? You just heard last night and Jay Zeal the other day, they want to just double down on this war on drugs, right? We're gonna help addicts in one hand and then throw them all in jail on the other and get drugs off the street. You're never gonna get drugs off the street. They've been trying for thousands of years in human history and hundreds in this country to get drugs off the street. It will never happen. So we need a harm reduction. I'm not like inventing this stuff. Like Portugal obviously has gone that way with decriminalizing all drugs. So I spoke to Jason one time on the 6th floor after he got elected. I went up and we want to talk about things. There's two things I talked to him about was purple bags, what was going on with that, and the drug situation, right? And I told him my plan would be, when you're off the camera and you're in the 6th floor and it's just you and him and people actually, like you said, like Rich in his house lets his hair down a little bit. You have conversations, and it's like, listen, it's my opinion, they're actually making the city less safe with this. Oh, we're gonna get all the drugs off the street and we're gonna add more police, and it's just making the problem worse because all of these people use drugs. They're gonna remain to use drugs. If you know anything about economics, let's say they took 1,000 bags of heroin off the street tomorrow, all that's going to do is make heroin become more valuable in the short term until it's replaced. The demand, they always try to reduce the supply, which will never happen. And even when they short term reduce the supply, they all it does is increase the value. That's just economics 101. So there is no war on drugs. It's a war on American people, and it's people that I know. I know people who struggle on using heroin and everything else. And you're basically kicking in people's doors and performing paramilitary. I'm sure Richard Cabasaris could explain that. Paramilitary raids on American citizens. And I've been involved in some of these raids where you have cops kicking doors in, guns drawn, and there's kids present, and it's just all over the drug thing. That's never going to go away. So my plan would be, I talked about this with Jean St. Pierre. As far as this harm reduction strategy would be to end the war on drugs in the city of Fall River. We can have the FRPD, use discretion that they do have legally to not arrest these people, and sit down and have a real conversation about how we're going to coexist with drugs because they'll always be here. They always have been here. That's basically the 30,000 foot view. Is I'm all and it was sad to hear Jay Zeal the other day. Basically, I tried to out Nixon with we're gonna make it hard for these drug dealers. We're gonna take it to the house. That's all nonsense. It's never gonna work. It never has worked. And that's honestly, it's pandering to votes.
Politicians like to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, is what it is. I don't see. Somebody said right before I came here, me and you were going to talk about things and nothing's going to change. That could very well be the case. That's the other thing too. Whether I get elected or not, I think the conversations, and I've always tried to lead the conversation into a certain direction. Where even if it's not me in charge, people can at least. I try to change minds of the people that I live with who vote for all these people. And hopefully dissuade them from voting for people who talk about the same old things. That make no sense. They're not. So again, adding police, let's get 2 more police officers on the patrol. You could be making the problem worse by adding more police to the rolls, and that could create more. So let's say they do get more drugs off the street, more guns off the street. That in itself could create more violence because, like I said, you're just creating this vacuum that's used in other ways. But So you could actually be making it worse. So you have these politicians who want to go there, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more of taxpayers' money because, and like Pam LeBeau said, these people just want to see cops in their neighborhood. It makes them feel. So we're gonna, just to trick people into thinking they're more safe because you see a cop in your neighborhood, even though it's actually pouring gasoline on the fire and actually making the city less safe. We're gonna go that route. So that's what I think is actually happening. So we need to just stop that. If I was actually the mayor of Fall River, I would, I've already mentioned this, disband the vice unit and actually take all those officers, put them towards things that I perceive actually do promote public safety, as opposed to drug raids, never-ending drug raids that will never curb the war on drugs, never curb the problem, make people more miserable, make people, make using drugs more harmful, and it's just a whole host of problems that it creates. So that would be the first thing I would do, is just end that whole practice. I'd have to work with Dupierre. He's the chief, and whoever the chief would be at the time, to the FRPD controls how we handle this thing locally. I don't care about state law or the federal government. Marijuana is still illegal. You know what I mean? So those people are not serious people. When you're talking Congress, the president, anybody else, they're not serious people. So you have to, and they don't live here. You don't have state police. You have state police tinkering around in the streets, pulling people over. Mostly it's a locally controlled Fall River Police Department issue that we have control over, and that's what I would change.
So we should focus more on education than criminalizing people.
That's another thing politicians say, education people. When I was in middle school, I knew people who died from drugs, and I don't think there's people in Fall River. Education isn't difficult to do. You just show people the results of drugs. It's in your face everywhere you go in Fall River at all times. So I don't think education's lacking. I think people do know. I honestly think it's we have to have a serious talk about how we're going to coexist with drugs, because they're always going to be here. They're available to you. They're available to me at all times. Do you use drugs in any way?
No.
Yeah, of course not. So you just made that choice. Some people do choose to, and because they choose to, it doesn't make them monsters. It doesn't make them let's throw them in government rape cages, you know what I mean, because they want to use drugs. That doesn't help the problem. Another thing too, is once people do get caught up in the criminal justice system, because I kind of do that for a living as well. I just like a quick overview is, it shouldn't be this place that fosters violence. That's what the Bristol County, Dartmouth House of Correction is this place where they throw all these people together who are already dysfunction, have them compete in violence. By the way, there's drugs flooded in every jail in America. So this idea that we're gonna get drugs off Fifth Street or whatever, it's just completely fallacy. I don't want to deal with fake solutions and whatnot. I want to actually address what the problem is.
Well, you went really into depth with that, so let's switch off into one more topic. We're running out of time.
Sure.
I'll just ask it's a two-part question. What is your opinion on the current charter, and what is your opinion on the proposed revised charter?
Sure. So I can answer that in 10 seconds. I'm against the charter change. It was sold to me probably 5 years ago now that it was going to be, one or two changes, we're going to update it, modernize it, whatever, and then they completely replaced it. They started tinkering with all these things. Their big claim to fame is, we're going to swing power from the mayor to the city council. Well, that only depends on, if you have a decent city council. That if you have a terrible city council, which I think we've had for decades as long as I've been alive, what use does that do? Again, that's politicians, right, making problems worse in the name of improving them. So, yeah, I'm against the charter. I hope everybody votes against it.
What would be your suggestions to change it?
Sure. I wouldn't change it. There's a couple things. Every law I've ever read is written horribly and can be improved. That's the whole, again, as a libertarian, for me to sit and think that Jordan's the king and I'm gonna dictate, I couldn't make one single rule that would apply to all the people that live in my house equally and fairly, never mind the 88,000 people who live in the city of Fall River. So that's where these politicians, and they're so arrogant, and they think they're gonna come up with all these solutions, and it's crazy. The only solution is to take all their authority out of dealing in your life, as humanly possible. There's things that, maybe society will choose they have to stay, in charge of, but as much as possible. There's many avenues where you can remove their influence, and that's what I think has to happen. That's what I would do. I'd go in there to slay Leviathan.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for coming on, Mr. Silvia. And
It's been great, buddy.
no, anytime.
Nice to meet you.
And we will have another episode in 2 weeks. And have a great day, everyone.